Okay, before we dive in, let me ask you something really simple. Coffee or tea? Go on, just pick one. Done? You just made a choice. You felt yourself weigh the options, maybe you imagined the taste, and then you decided. That feeling, that's you in the driver's seat.
But, see, according to neuroscientist Dr. Robert Sapolsky, you're not even asking the most important question. He'd argue the real question isn't what you chose, but how you became the kind of person who would choose coffee over tea in that exact moment.
And that one question is the key to this whole explainer. We are diving headfirst into Sapolsky's decades of research to tackle one of our most fundamental beliefs, free will. And its conclusion? It's radical, it's uncompromising, and it's this. Free will, as you and I think about it, just doesn't exist.
Whoa, hold on. That's a huge claim. I mean, I feel like I just made a choice. I was consciously aware of the alternatives. I could have picked tea. It feels completely, totally real. How can you say it's just an illusion?
And you're absolutely right. That feeling is powerful. It's the common sense definition we all live by. We feel like we're the ones writing our own story, that in any given moment we could have chosen differently. But Sapolsky says that's only because we're looking at the very last fleeting second of the decision.
He argues that when we focus on that moment of choice, we're just staring at the finish line without seeing the entire race that led up to it. That intent you felt to choose coffee was actually the unavoidable result of a long chain of events that you had zero control over. So let's start breaking down the science behind that.
Let's start with what's going on just seconds or minutes before you make a decision. Your immediate biology, the actual machinery of your brain and your body, is already setting the stage for what you're about to do.
So, imagine you have a split second to decide if that object in someone's hand is a cell phone or a gun. That decision isn't purely rational, not even close. It's massively shaped by all these unconscious factors. Are you hungry? Tired? Stressed? Your brain is going to make a different call based on that input from just moments before.
Okay, I can see that for a high-stress fight-or-flight scenario where your gut instincts take over. But what about, say, a judge in a quiet courtroom? They're supposed to be making calm, logical decisions based on nothing but the facts. Surely that has to be an example of free will, right?
You would definitely think so. But a really famous study of Israeli parole board judges found something absolutely astonishing. Turns out, the single biggest thing that predicted whether they granted parole wasn't the crime, it wasn't the prisoner's behavior, it was how long it had been since the judge last ate.
Right after a meal break, the parole rate was around 60%. But a few hours later, when they were hungry, it dropped to almost zero. And here's why. Your frontal cortex, the part of your brain that does the hard work of empathy and complex reasoning, is an energy hog. When your blood sugar is low, it just defaults to the easier, safer option. And the easier, safer option is just saying no. It's not a rational choice. It's a biological machine running low on fuel.
All right, I gotta say, that hungry judge example is pretty tough to argue with. I'll concede, our biology in the moment plays a huge role. But what about the bigger picture? You know, our upbringing, our values, our entire life's worth of experiences. Surely that's where the real us steps in to make a choice.
That is exactly where Sapolsky goes next. He calls it distributed causality. The idea is that the cause of any action isn't just one thing. It's this incredible chain stretching all the way back in time. It starts with the neurons that fired a second ago, but it goes back to the hormones from hours ago, to the trauma from years ago, all the way back through your childhood, your genes, and even the culture that your ancestors built centuries ago.
Take culture, for instance. Your ancestors' environment, like were they individualist wheat farmers or more cooperative rice farmers, that shaped their core values. And those values got passed down generation after generation, physically shaping the brains of their descendants, including you. And to see just how deep this stuff runs, check out this study done in a Starbucks in China. Researchers blocked a pathway with a couple of chairs. Students from the more individualistic wheat-growing regions, they just moved the chairs. But students from the collectivist rice-growing regions tended to squeeze around them because they didn't want to disturb the environment. Think about that. Centuries of agricultural history influencing a tiny, trivial choice in a coffee shop today. Okay. This is starting to get really uncomfortable, because if every single action is just the end of a long causal chain that we don't control, then what happens to morality, to personal responsibility? I mean, if someone does something truly awful, don't we have to hold them accountable?
That is the radical conclusion, and Sapolsky does not shy away from it one bit. If there's no free will, then our entire concept of blame and praise is built on a faulty foundation. I mean, we don't blame a car because its brakes failed, and we shouldn't praise someone for winning a genetic lottery they never even entered.
So what do you do with dangerous people? The argument isn't to just let them run free. It's to shift to a kind of public health model, a quarantine model. You identify that a person is a danger to others, and you protect society by containing them, but you do it without all the moral judgment and blame.
It's a really fundamental shift in perspective. See, punishment is all about retribution. It assumes a person chose to be bad. This quarantine model is about safety and prevention. You take the car with bad brakes off the road so it can't hurt anyone, but you don't punish the car. The whole focus moves from blame to trying to understand and fix the root causes.
So, where does all of this leave us? It's a profoundly challenging idea for sure. It seems to go against our deepest feelings about who we are. But the scientific evidence, from neuroscience to genetics to cultural anthropology, it all keeps pointing in the same direction.
Ultimately, Sapolsky's argument is that every thought you have, every feeling you experience, and every action you take is the determined outcome of everything that came before it. There's no separate you, no little CEO in your head making free choices. We are, in a very real and literal sense, just the sum total of our biology and our history.
And all of this brings us to one final kind of paradoxical question. If you actually accept this, that you aren't the author of your actions, that everything is determined, what changes? How does that knowledge, which is now a new input into your biological machine, affect what you will inevitably do tomorrow? Something to think about.